This is the Metro Weekly Podcast. Today we have three really interesting political developments. First we have, meet J.D. Vance, Trump's anti-LGBTQ running mate. Followed by, Pete Buttigieg's blistering takedown of J.D. Vance. And then ending with, after backlash, White House clarifies position on transgender surgery. We begin today with
the U.S. Senator from Ohio, J.D. Vance, and self-described populist is nearly indistinguishable from former Vice President Mike Pence on gay and trans issues. By John Riley on July 15, 2024. Former President Donald Trump has tapped U.S. Senator J.D. Vance as his vice presidential running mate. A self-acclaimed populist best known for espousing natalist domestic policies, the Ohio Republican echoes his party's lurch toward right-wing populism and a more nationalist, isolationist approach to foreign policy. On social issues, Vance is nearly indistinguishable from Mike Pence, although he is more outspoken and confrontational about his conservative beliefs and values than the former vice president. A Yale Law School graduate and the author of Hillbilly Elegy, a memoir detailing his upbringing in Appalachia, was elected to the U.S. Senate in 2022. A Trump critic in 2016, who went so far as to liken the former president to Hitler, the 39-year-old Vance has since become one of the candidate's most loyal devotees, styling himself as a voice on behalf of cultural conservatives, rural voters, and blue-collar workers. Vance often trolls and attacks his political opponents on social media, casting them as evil, depraved, stupid, or indifferent to working-class people, and hostile to religion or culturally conservative values. Vance is well known for advocating natalism in public policy, in which the government creates various financial and social incentives for people to marry and reproduce. He is one of several Republicans who frequently lavishes praise on right-wing Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán for his domestic policies, particularly those aimed at cracking down on LGBTQ visibility and restricting immigration. Orbán justifies his policies as an attempt to boost his country's birth rate and maintain a singular, unified culture rooted in religious conservatism and traditionalist views of family. In keeping with those views, Vance has previously attacked the childless left for failing to invest in the United States by having children and promoting national pride and conservative social values. He argues that family formation and unencumbered reproduction, which, although he does not say it, would necessitate the societal rejection, or outlawing, of birth control and abortion, is needed to ensure stronger families. Vance has attacked people for being childless, including U.S. Senator Cory Booker and U.S. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, both unmarried, as well as Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, the father of a pair of adopted twins, and Vice President Kamala Harris, who has two stepchildren. Vance has argued that parents with children should have a greater say in electoral politics, and how the government functions, than those without. He even appeared to suggest that only parents with children be allowed to vote, with people with multiple children potentially receiving multiple votes. Let's give votes to all children in this country, but let's give control over those votes to the parents of the children, Vance said while addressing a political right-wing conference. Doesn't this mean that non-parents don't have as much of a voice as parents? Doesn't this mean that parents get a bigger say in how democracy functions? Yes. Accordingly, Vance is a fierce opponent of visibility for same-sex couples and LGBTQ individuals. While his predecessor, Rob Portman, voted for the Respect for Marriage Act, Vance said back in 2022 that he would have voted against the legislation, which requires the federal government and state governments to recognize the validity of same-gender marriages performed legally in states without explicit bans on such unions. The law was passed to circumvent a possible decision by the U.S. Supreme Court reversing the court's 2015 Obergefell decision and restoring bans on same-sex marriages. Vance lambasted conservative Supreme Court justices after the court ruled, in 2020, by a 6-3 margin, that LGBTQ employees are protected from workplace discrimination by Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. Lamenting on social media, the conservative legal movement has accomplished two things: libertarian political economy, enforced by judges, and betrayal of social conservatives and traditionalists. Vance introduced the Protect Children's Innocence Act, which bans all types of gender-affirming healthcare while spreading what community advocates say is misinformation about treatments like puberty blockers, hormone therapy, or gender confirmation surgery, the latter of which is rarely performed on minors. The bill also prohibits taxpayer funds, including Medicaid dollars, from being used to cover the cost of gender-affirming care, and proposes up to 15 years in jail for anyone who assists a minor in obtaining gender-affirming treatments. Vance has expressed support for Don't Say Gay-style bills, like the one passed in Florida, with fewer restrictions, prohibiting teachers from answering questions, allowing discussions, or incorporating material related to LGBTQ identity in schools. He has called people opposing such bills groomers who wish to sexualize children, has supported bans on books with gay and trans content, and has claimed that bans on related topics are a way to advance parental rights. Vance also appears to oppose open military service by gay and trans individuals, attacking military leaders and the Biden administration of using America's military as a social justice side project, and opposing diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives in the armed forces. Vance, like Trump, opposes the United States' support of Ukraine in its ongoing war against Russia. He has made comments sympathizing with Russia and its authoritarian president, Vladimir Putin. Among those comments was a claim that the Biden administration was risking war with Russia due to its support of Ukraine, simply because Putin opposes transgender rights. The independent fact-checking website PolitiFact rated the claim as pants on fire, signifying so false that it is not grounded in reality. Vance has also ridiculed and questioned the existence of transgender and non-binary individuals, accusing frequent foil Ocasio-Cortez of inventing the term Two-Spirit to refer to non-binary Native American and indigenous people. "I'm sorry, but what the hell is Two-Spirit?" Vance asked in a post on X. "Would love if progressives just stopped inventing words."
Next we have a related report.
Transportation Secretary Buttigieg speculated on why gay billionaire Peter Thiel heavily funded J.D. Vance's rise to power. By John Riley on July 22, 2024. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg took a swipe at Republican vice presidential nominee J.D. Vance, casting the junior U.S. Senator from Ohio as an opportunist with no moral core who owes much of his political career to being financially propped up by rich elites. Appearing on the July 19 episode of Real Time with Bill Maher, Maher asked Buttigieg his opinion of Vance, as well as the support that Vance, an ardent social conservative who opposes marriage equality and legal protections for LGBTQ individuals, has received from gay billionaire Peter Thiel. Vance's rise to power came as a result of monetary donations from billionaire executives and investors, including Thiel, entrepreneur David Sachs, and Elon Musk, whom Vance met while working in Silicon Valley. Thiel helped raise $120 million to help get Vance's venture firm, Naria Capital, off the ground. He also reportedly helped Vance further make professional connections to advance Vance's career, and gave $15 million to support Vance's campaign for the U.S. Senate 2 years ago. "I know him a little bit," Buttigieg said of Vance. "Look, we're from the same generation. We're both from the Midwest. I've run into a lot of guys like him." Regarding Thiel's backing of Vance despite the latter's vocally conservative stances on various social issues, Buttigieg said, "I know there are a lot of folks who say, what's going on with some of these Silicon Valley folks veering into Trump world with J.D. Vance and backing Trump? What are they thinking? Silicon Valley's supposed to care about climate. They're supposed to be pro-science and rational and libertarians. Normally libertarians don't like authoritarians. What's up with that? I think we've made it way too complicated," Buttigieg continued. "It's super simple. These are very rich men who have decided to back a Republican Party that tends to do good things for very rich men." Buttigieg added that Vance, despite his efforts to paint himself as a populist and the son of working-class Appalachia, will cater to the whims of rich elites if he becomes vice president. "So I knew a lot of people like him when I got to Harvard," Buttigieg said of Vance. "I found a lot of people like him, who would say whatever they needed to get ahead. And 5 years ago, that seemed like being the anti-Trump Republican. So that's what he was." He talked about how Trump was unfit, how he was cynical, called him an opioid, which is kind of a weird thing to say about a person. But for somebody whose identity is that they're connected to Appalachia, which has an opioid crisis, that really is the darkest thing you could say about Donald Trump, at least in public. But behind the scenes, apparently, he's actually calling him Hitler, right? Seriously, Buttigieg said, referring to the Ohio senator's past rhetoric. 5 years later, the way he gets ahead is that Trump's the greatest guy since sliced bread. Buttigieg compared Vance's last-minute, politically expedient conversion to a Trump acolyte to that of Trump's former vice president, Mike Pence. Buttigieg said he watched Pence start out as an evangelical Christian who cared about rectitude and family values, and then get on board with a guy who was mixed up with a porn star, and make excuses for him so that he could have power. Buttigieg noted that after 4 years in office, Pence's bid for power ended on the west front of the U.S. Capitol, with Trump supporters proposing that he be hanged for using the one shred of integrity he still had to stand up to an attempt to overturn the government. Pence has previously said he does not intend to endorse Donald Trump in this year's presidential election. So I guess, maybe, not as a politician, but as a human being, what I'll say is that I hope things work out a little bit better for J.D. Vance than they did for Mike Pence.
And finally, we close today's show with:
the Biden administration opposes bans on transgender health care, even though it believes surgery should be delayed until adulthood. By John Riley on July 22, 2024. The Biden administration clarified its stance on gender-affirming care for minors after previously angering LGBTQ advocacy groups for appearing to support a ban on surgical interventions. Earlier this month, a White House spokesperson told the independent news outlet the 19th that the administration believed that surgical procedures undertaken to align a person's physical appearance with their gender identity should be limited to adults. That spokesperson appeared to distinguish between opposing surgical interventions for minors while still opposing state-level bans for gender-affirming treatments, like puberty blockers and hormone therapy, arguing that the decision to pursue such treatments should be made by minors' parents in consultation with doctors. Following that statement, the Biden administration received pushback from many major LGBTQ organizations, who accused the administration of kowtowing to political pressure from religious conservatives and gender skeptics and muddying the waters around its stance on gender-affirming care. Rodrigo Hang-Lehtinen, executive director of Advocates for Trans Equality, told The Guardian that the statement unfortunately sowed a lot of confusion among transgender people and our families as to what is their position. Neera Tandon, a domestic policy advisor to President Biden, sought to assuage those concerns when she later emailed gay and trans groups clarifying the White House's position. The Biden-Harris administration opposes explicit, categorical bans on surgery and other types of gender-affirming care. We continue to fight state and national bans of gender-affirming care, which represents a continuum of care, and respect the role of parents, families, and doctors, not politicians, in these decisions, Tandon wrote in the email, which was obtained by The Guardian. Gender-affirming surgeries are typically reserved for adults, and we believe they should be, Tandon continued. Above all, families should have the freedom to make the medical decisions that they and their doctors determine are best for them, which is why we oppose attempts to limit health care for transgender individuals in the courts or through legislation. Many community groups breathed a sigh of relief. We're encouraged to see this clarification from the White House so that trans people and our families can know for certain that the Biden administration will keep fighting for access to vital doctor-prescribed health care, Hang-Lehtinen said. Kelly Robinson, the president of the Human Rights Campaign, also thanked the Biden administration for providing a clearer understanding of its position. We appreciate that the administration has clarified that its position on health care for the transgender community has not changed, that it opposes any and all bans on access to care, and will continue to fight these bans both in the courts and at the legislative level, Robinson said in a statement. Hang-Lehtinen told The Guardian that gender confirmation surgery is incredibly rare and reserved for the most extreme cases of gender dysphoria, in which a person might attempt self-harm or suicide due to their distress. For the patients who do have surgery, it's important for them, and it's based on seeing many specialists and really tailored treatment with the supervision of multiple doctors and their families, he said. So it's rare. And when it does happen, it's because of a really thoroughly investigated course of action. Recently, a new study from Harvard University's T.H. Chan School of Public Health found that gender-affirming surgeries in the United States are extremely rare, with 0 being performed on youth younger than 12 and 2.1 per 100,000 people for teens aged 15 to 17. That study also found that the types of gender-affirming surgeries typically recommended for transgender individuals are more common among cisgender male children, such as boys with gynecomastia, and adults.
Thank you for listening. We love that you are helping us grow our audience by subscribing, hitting the like buttons and leaving comments on our social media apps. For more news like this, metroweekly.com.